Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon to everyone joining in from Sri Lanka. A very good morning to everyone else joining from the UK and America, to the Dhamma Center community, as well as the community of the servants of the Buddha. We are very pleased to collaborate as the Dhamma Center, as the Abbot of the Dhamma Center. I am very pleased to collaborate with the servants of the Buddha on this very special occasion, being the Udua Poe Day, which symbolifies the arriving of the Venerable Bhikkhuni Sangamitta onto the shores of Sri Lanka, bringing with her a symbol of Buddhism, which has been the object of respect and worship for many centuries now. So before we start the session, I would like to warmly welcome Venerable Ananda, who is present here. Bhante, welcome to the session. We are very grateful and happy to see you and have you a part of this session, and to all the other Sangha members who have tuned in today. To introduce the speakers who would be a part of the panelists for today, we have with us the former president of the Servants of the Buddha, Mrs. Anuja Vijaysekara, and the current president, Professor Manori Siranayaka. The Servants of the Buddha is a long-standing organization which has reigned for 101 years. They have recently celebrated their centenary. And Professor Manori pointed out that the Servants of the Buddha has been able to have continuous meetings on a weekly basis for the extent since its inception for these 101 years. Every day on Saturday at this time, the Servants of the Buddha has been meeting to discuss Dhamma. And along with my personal interactions with the Servants of the Buddha community, what I have found is a group of individuals who are so committed to true Dhamma learning and practice. So we are very happy again to be partnering with the Servants of the Buddha to offer to you this segment on the significance of Venerable Sangamitta, and also bringing to light the contributions made by various female and other leaders around the world and in Sri Lanka, which has molded the Bhikkhuni Sasana and the role of women in the world today. We also have with us Don De Silva, who is a trustee of the Dhamma Center and a former UN official on sustainable development. So I am very happy and pleased to invite all of you to be a part of this session and to sort of continue this discussion with all of the attendees as well. So the agenda for
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Bhante. Could you raise your volume? This is just so important to me to hear every word. So I apologize for my interruption and forgive me, but would you be kind enough if you can just make it a little louder? Thank you so much.
Thank you. I am not sure how I can make it louder, to be honest with you. I can try to speak a little bit louder. I hope the others can hear me all right, but I will try to speak a little bit louder. So the agenda for today is going to be, we'll be starting with individual presentations and statements made by the panelists today, and then we'll be going into a panel discussion where we will be welcoming your comments, your suggestions, and your questions towards the panelists here today. We are hoping on also having Venerable Maharagama Uppalawanna here with us shortly. She's currently experiencing some technical issues, but she's hoping to also join us and enlighten us on the position and current affairs regarding Bhikkhunis in Sri Lanka today. So to start off the session, I would like to invite Anuja, Mrs. Anuja Vijaysekara, to start off the session, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Venerable Sir. And thank you to the Dhamma Center, as well as the President of the Servants of the Buddha for inviting me to speak today. And I have to say that today is a day of utmost importance to half the population of the world, namely women. And as you know, 2,600 years ago, the Buddha took the unprecedented and revolutionary step of recognizing the equal status of women by establishing the Bhikkhuni order at a time when such an elevated status for women was unthinkable. In the context of world history, the Buddha was the first person to honor the principle of equal opportunities for women, which opened the doors for women to ordain and pursue the path to enlightenment on an equal footing with bhikkhus. The first to ordain was Mahaprajapati Gautami, the foster mother of Prince Siddhartha, followed by large numbers of royal ladies and others from all walks of strata of society of India during that time. Centuries later, during the reign of Emperor Asoka in the 3rd century BC, his daughter Sangamitta and son Mahinda ordained, and they both attained enlightenment. Emperor Asoka, his reign is 304 BC to 232 BC. Emperor Asoka, having adopted Buddhism, created a Buddhist empire in India and undertook the task of spreading the tenets of Buddhism to 9 other countries, namely China, Burma, Indonesia, Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam, Laos, Malaysia, and Sri Lanka. He sent his own son Mahinda to Sri Lanka. The king of Sri Lanka, Devanampiya Tissa, embraced Buddhism and large numbers ordained as monks. There was a clamor for ordination by the ladies of the court, including Queen Anula. Arhat Mahinda, therefore, requested his sister Sangamitta to fulfill this need by undertaking a voyage to Sri Lanka. So Theri Sangamitta brought with her a sapling from the bo tree under which the Buddha attained enlightenment to Sri Lanka. Today in Sri Lanka, we celebrate Unduwa Poya Day to honor 2 specific events associated with the arrival of Theri Arhat Sangamitta in the year 245 BC. These 2 events are, firstly, the establishment of the order of nuns or bhikkhunis, and secondly, the planting of the bo sapling in Anuradhapura, which survives to this day. The bo tree brought by Arhat Theri Sangamitta has stood the test of time and has been nurtured with meticulous care and survives to this day. It is venerated as one of the most sacred living objects of worship for Buddhists in Sri Lanka. The Bhikkhuni order, which Theri Sangamitta established with royal patronage, prospered for nearly over 1,000 years. Many bhikkhunis, including Queen Anula, attained enlightenment. However, in later centuries, as a consequence of invasions from South India and protracted wars, followed by long periods of famine, the Bhikkhuni order disappeared by 1017 AD. It is noteworthy that in 429 AD, Bhikkhuni Devasara, realizing that the Bhikkhuni order could be in peril, embarked on a mission to China in 429 AD to establish a Bhikkhuni order there. The original Theravada Bhikkhuni lineage established by the Sri Lankan nun Bhikkhuni Devasara in China in 429 AD has continued unbroken to this day. After the disappearance of the Bhikkhuni order in Sri Lanka, the same fate befell the Bhikkhu order. However, in the 18th century, Bhikkhu Asarana Sarana Mahathera embarked on a dangerous sea voyage to Burma with the help of the Dutch, who had by then colonized the maritime provinces of Sri Lanka. The higher ordination for monks was thus re-established in Sri Lanka in 1753 AD. Unfortunately, the same effort was not made to re-establish higher ordination for bhikkhunis. Thus, the bhikkhuni order disappeared in Sri Lanka. In the early 20th century, however, a Dasasil, that is 10 precept order, was established. Later, in the latter part of the 20th century, Aya Kema gave an impetus to re-establish the bhikkhuni order. In the 1990s, Kusuma Devendra, who was a long-time member of the Servants of the Buddha, took the courageous step of gaining higher ordination through the lineage that Bhikkhuni Devasara had established in China in the 5th century AD. Her courageous step, together with 9 other ladies, was emulated subsequently by thousands of women in Sri Lanka. Today, we have close to 7,000 bhikkhunis and silmatas in Sri Lanka. To celebrate today's Sangamitta Day, the greatest respect we can pay the Buddha as well as Theri Sangamitta is to support the bhikkhuni order in Sri Lanka so that bhikkhuni Sangamitta, so that the bhikkhunis can play their full role in continuing and strengthening the Buddha Sasana established by Arhat Mahinda and his sister Arhat Sangamitta in the 3rd century BC. I'm not sure in terms of time, how much time I have taken or whether I have a little more time, in which case I could kind of dip into some aspects that Bhikkhuni Uppalavanna was going to mention subsequent to my presentation, short presentation.
Bhikkhuni Uppalavanna is also here with us now.
Right. So
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Anuja. Thank you very much. Bhikkhuni Uppalavanna. Welcome, Bhikkhuni. If you could kindly unmute yourself. All right, Bhikkhuni. We can hear you now.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Bhikkhuni. We are very happy to have you with us, and we are very happy that you've been able to sort out the technical difficulties.
Venerable sir, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. Okay, Venerable sir, it's a very pleasant day today because it is being full moon day, and because it is Sangamitta Memorial Day. Actually, I have to thank you so much, and also the Servants of the Buddha group, because actually I have been waiting to have something like this, but our medias, of course, did not help us that much. Actually, I was a little worried by the time you talked to us. So anyway, I'm there, and as Mrs. Anoja said, Bhikkhuni order disappeared from Sri Lanka about 1,000 years back. Now we have brought it back from
I think, unfortunately.
From China. Yeah. Bhikkhuni Kusuma was inspired by Ayakema. And so she, of course, the main point I see in Kusuma Bhikkhuni is that she made a research. She launched a research finding about the Sila Matas, Dasa Sila Matas, and how to, whether we could bring Upasampada or higher ordination from somewhere that it is there. So this is what happened. And Mapalagama Vipula Saratero took the pioneer, and so somehow we brought it. So after that, from Sakadita also helped that. We have to mention those names. And through Sakadita, we brought it in 1996, but our Theravada bhikkhus were reluctant to accept this. Anyway, again in 1998, the Dambulla crowd, that is Most Venerable Sumangala Thera and Most Venerable Vajira Thera, and who was in Malaysia, the Malaysian Sangaraja, Kesri, Dhammananda Thera, etc., etc. There were about 15 monks who helped us, Sri Lankan bhikkhus, and we brought it again in 1998. From there onwards, Dambulla Golden Temple or the Rock Temple started training bhikkhunis in Sri Lanka. So Kalundeva, they started the center, and there the Upasampada training was given to the bhikkhunis, and higher ordination still today it's going on there. I think now about 29 batches passed out from this place, and higher ordination is there. But the thing is, bhikkhunis are not accepted, and bhikkhunis have not been given an identification. So we have that problem at the moment. In thriving, bhikkhunis have been thriving, and they have started. We have started Pirivena studies. Our Samaneris are learning through Pirivenas. And also recently we started teaching them through English medium, that is Tipitaka Dhamma and the Pirivena education through English medium. So this is something that we have achieved. That is a plus point. And also I myself have started some activities through the International Buddhist Education and Research Organization. And we have started publishing a paper called Therini, and to discuss about bhikkhunis and bhikkhunis services, etc. So our bhikkhunis are doing a lot of things silently, even though they are not accepted. They do a lot of things, and we do counseling with Sri Lankan families, and most of the time the ladies who have problems come to us, and the families with their problems come to us. Girls come to us and ask for the counseling.
All right.
And for the support, services to the society in that way, and some pujas, etc., of course, is done. I think we have to study. Now we are going through, many of our bhikkhunis have started learning, because otherwise we can't move with the international crowd. So I believe that we have to be with and go forward, and they will someday give us the due respect.
Venerable, I'm sorry,
At
but
the moment,
we'll have to move on to the other presenter, the other panelists, but we will have you back with us for the panel discussion. Professor Manori. Professor Manori, you will have to unmute yourself, please. Yes, we can hear you now.
Right. Thank you, Venerable Bhante, members of the Mahasangha, bhikkhus and bhikkhunis, my fellow panelists and friends. My task would be to look at the impact on Sri Lanka of the arrival of Sangamitta Therani. And although this has two broad areas, that of the Botri and the Bhikkhuni order that she established, I would, because there are other speakers who are mentioning on the Botri, I will confine myself to the Bhikkhuni order and its influence on society in general and women in particular. Firstly, why a Bhikkhuni order was established, I would like to relook at that and highlight two reasons. The Buddha himself remarked that the Buddha's dispensation or the sasana should be a fourfold community consisting of bhikkhus, bhikkhunis, as well as lay upasaka, upasika, or laymen and laywomen. So that, and the other is the viewpoint or the statement that Arahat Mahinda made to King Devanampiyathissa, that the religion can be considered firmly established in a land only if persons born on the soil of that land are ordained. And hence the need for Sangamitta Therani to arrive, which was a great and wonderful happening to this country, and thereby the establishment of the sasana. Once established, the Bhikkhuni order has expanded very rapidly. The Chronicle Deepavamsa records that, for example, at the consecration of Mirisavattaya, there were 100,000 bhikkhus and 90,000 bhikkhunis present. And these staggering figures are given over and over again. Now, of course, one could look at these statistics and think they were inaccurate, exaggerated, or imaginary. If so, the same would apply to both bhikkhus and bhikkhunis alike in the era. However, I would like to also bring in some inscriptional evidence that predates the chronicles, which are available at Sanchi, which is the best preserved ancient Buddhist architectural site in India, where there are very valuable monuments housing the relics of the Buddha and his chief two disciples. Now, in the 3rd century BCE, once again Asokan times, and around the same time Sangamitta Theri arrived here, these monuments were restored and expanded. And then the names of donors were etched on those stones. And a detailed study has shown that 1/3 of those names of donors were monastics, and 129 were bhikkhus and 125 bhikkhunis. This indicates that the bhikkhunis were as capable and as free as the bhikkhus to come forward as donors and have the strength to do so. So that's fairly hard evidence, I think. Now, this lack of gender bias is entirely in keeping with the tenets of Buddhism, which we know because the Buddha has, on many discourses. And I would just like to say that the positive effect, that one of the main positive effects of the Bhikkhuni order was the elevation of the status of women. And this was not just for adults, but also, I would think, right from birth, that of a girl child. And we have, in the Buddha's own words, the Mallika Sutta in the Samyutta Nikaya, where the Buddha explains to King Pasenadi Kosala why he should be joyous at the birth of a daughter, and he extols all the good character, the great value of a female birth, and thereafter the life of a female. And of course, we've seen King Devanampiyathissa, even on this flyer, shown as wading into the water and kneeling before the bhikkhuni. So the status of women in Sri Lanka was changed forever, and that was a tremendous step. Now, not only were the bhikkhunis hugely respected in society, but lay women who were devotees were also respected. There was a great versatility among the different bhikkhunis and also from all social strata. As we heard, royalty, Queen Anula, who was the consort of the heir apparent, but also king's women of top officials, as well as young peasant women were ordained, and hence this rapid growth. Now, the doctrine also molded the lives of women in very many ways. The culture, the thinking, the behavior changed. And the women were said to be, we have literary data as well as the chronicle state that the women were discussing Dhamma or their progress in meditation while grinding chilies or pounding and at the well side. So it became the influence of the religion was enormous on the women in society. And the bhikkhunis obviously played a major role. As we heard already, the ability of a woman to reach right into the heart of a household in times of distress, I think can show concern and care is unmatched, as we know. Right. Now, this piety and devotion that women had then led to scholarship, first through recitation, reading, and so forth. And even the most difficult sections of the doctrine, the most difficult to comprehend, like the Abhidhamma, we are told that there are names of women and even queen consorts and queen mums who were studying these books. So, and to date, I have to say that Sri Lanka can boast of a very high level in female education and literacy rate. It could be that those seeds planted then in the lives of women are still bearing fruit. As a pediatrician, I have to say that maternal comprehension is the key to acceptance of health strategies. And this is reflected in our infant mortality rate, which is in single digits, while our neighboring countries, powerful even with nuclear capacity and with much greater technological advances, are struggling to bring their mortality of their babies down, whereas we have just come down to 7 per 1,000 live births. So those wholesome seeds undoubtedly are still bearing fruit. Let's not forget, with regard to status of the woman, that Sri Lanka produced the first woman prime minister, which directly or indirectly could be related. However, all was not rosy. We heard there was the dying out of the Bhikkhuni order. However, women, and at that time, women lost their right during this dark age, they lost their right to renunciation, a span of about 9 centuries. And nevertheless, women were still in large numbers that contact and devotion to the religion continued. Even today, women are the great supporters of the Sangha. You see there on a head count, they would outnumber men at any religious and festival. And in a retreat, that difference is even greater. Now, women could, during this dark age, only observe the precepts on a day such as this, 8 or 10 precepts, and return to household lives. But I want to mention on a day such as this, that there was a young and courageous woman who single-handedly shattered this barricade forever. She was Catherine Dialvis Gunatilaka, who well deserves mention today. She was born to a Christian wealthy family, took to the religion got attracted to Buddhism as a very young girl. But the turning point was a chance meeting at the Temple of the Tooth with Burmese nuns who had come on a pilgrimage. Now, these were not bhikkhunis, but they were the 10 precept holders. And she, realizing that a life of renunciation was possible, which had been denied, she went back, returned with the nuns to Burma. And when she returned to Sri Lanka 11 years later as Sister Sudharmachari, she was greeted in 1905. This is noteworthy to say that it was the British governor of Ceylon who himself, he and his Lady Blake, he was Sir Henry Blake, were there amongst the crowd to meet her. And he donated a piece of land in Katukale, Kandy. And to date, the Lady Blake Silmata Arame stands there. So that from then onwards, there were the Silmatas, and I believe there are over 4,000. These are genuine renunciants. However, these Dasa Silmatas are neither laywomen nor bhikkhunis. They sort of occupy this in-between space. They are respected. They have access to institutional education, and their identity cards and things, not easily. After a tortuous journey, with time, they have got it. But some of them obviously want to upgrade and become bhikkhunis. I don't have that figure in numbers. Let me end up with just the fact that women are fully capable of experiencing full awakening or enlightenment. This has been endorsed and even publicly acclaimed by the Buddha. We know in the Chula Vedalla Sutta, the Buddha explained the explanations of Arahat Dhammadinna to her ex-husband Visakha. The Buddha said that he could not have done any better. And also the canonical texts give so many examples. We have the Therigathas, songs of enlightenment by elder nuns, so that women are quite capable. Finally, I would also like to share that there is this Dhammapada verse 164, when the Buddha admonishes a monk named Kala for obstructing the spiritual path of a female devotee. This Thera Kala actually tells the Buddha not to teach this lady, who was his female devotee, anything other than generosity and virtue, only dana and sila, and not to teach bhavana. And the Buddha then, with this verse in Dhammapada, says that if you obstruct in this way, you would be destroying yourself, like likens a simile of a kind of bamboo. So I will end there. But to date, I could just say that the status of women and female education, we have no gender bias in free education or in compulsory education in this country. And we don't have things like female infanticides. That sort of thing doesn't happen here. And the close bond with the religion on the part of females continues, as started, I think, by Sangamitta theory, and on a day such as this, on arriving, and also the need to renounce lay life, that attraction, or that is also there among women, as you have heard from Venerable Uppalavanna and so forth. Thank you, Bhante.
Thank you very much, Professor Manori. Thank you very much for those very interesting points that you have made. Don, it is your turn, Don. It's yours. Don, you will have to unmute yourself, please.
Unmuting, sharing the screen. Can you see the screen?
Yes, Don. Very good.
Thank you so much. I'm just going to go into full mode in my play. Right. Wonderful. Thank you, Bhante, and thank you very much for the servants of the Buddha, Sri Lanka, also for this occasion. I'm Don De Silva. Let me just briefly introduce myself. I am currently a university Buddhist chaplain and mentor here in the UK, but I was the former senior official of the United Nations Environment Programme. The significance of the life of Sangamitta needs to be seen against the backdrop of what is happening in the world today. And so we are seeing existential threats of COVID-19, climate change, and the ongoing debilitating poverty, which impacts some millions and millions of people throughout the world. So within this context, the question needs to be asked, what can a person do? And also these days, with discussions going on, particularly about climate action, can a young person make a lasting impact in the world. So we turn to Theri Sangamitta, which is, and I would like to demonstrate to you, is also a collective effort in the spirit of the Dhamma and the Sangha, which is a collective process. Let's start with taking a look at where the origins of this very interesting initiative took place, which is at Pataliputta, the seat of Emperor Asoka, the seat of the Mauryan Empire. And then from there came a remarkable process of diplomacy. The spread of Buddhism was collective, generations together. Alongside Arhat Mahinda and Theri Sangamitta and Emperor Asoka, the key strategists we really also need to mention who mapped out the spread of Buddhism was Arhat Moggaliputta Tissa, who was, in more current parlance, I would equate as the Secretary of State or the Foreign Minister in the court of King Asoka or Emperor Asoka. The final part of the Samantapasadika's background narrative tells the story of how Venerable Moggaliputta Tissa organized 9 different missions to spread the teachings of the Dhamma to the so-called, within quotes, border regions where it would be firmly established. And you see that map online, of which Sri Lanka was one. Now, this is really quite interesting that to Sri Lanka, I think the diplomatic mission had the highest element of authority because it was led by his son, followed by his daughter. And this is a very interesting example of constructive diplomacy, which I call Dhammic diplomacy, not through guns, but by a teaching that is based on justice, compassion, and science. This assistance from Emperor Asoka did not involve money, motives, deals, or agreements. It shared the profound teachings of the Buddha, accepted also on the basis of trust, respect, and statespersonship between the 2 rulers of the time, Emperor Asoka and King Devanampaya Tissa. In sending his daughter and his son, Emperor Asoka put aside the demands of succession to his rule. Think of the sacrifice that was done in sending 2 of the most prominent individuals in his royal household. Here we have, of course, a relief from Sanchi of Asoka the Great. And on the other side, you have in Mihintale, Sri Lanka, the stone statue of King Devanampaya Tissa. And let's have a look at the backdrop concerning this. So you have here 2 very interesting statements. In the Rigveda, the wedding hymn, which gives, in a nutshell, the status of women at the time. Make her, thou bounteous Indra, a good mother of sons, grant her good fortune, and give her 10 sons, and make her husband the 11th. On the right, this is of the many plethora of statements of the Buddha on women and equity and status. This is just one tiny statement of the Buddha in the Dhammapada. Thinking, I have sons, I have wealth, the childish person is tormented. He has indeed no self of his own. And then the Buddha poses the question, whence sons? Whence wealth? He seems to, in this little statement, but powerful statement, bring up the measurement of wealth, which was at that time, which is also applicable even today in terms of the fact that the measurement of wealth is the well-being of a person, of an individual, not the gross domestic product that we have or the per capita income that we have in economics. And also at the time of the Buddha, there was the abduction of women and girls and trafficking of women and girls. And the Buddha was pretty straightforward when he said, and he referred to the sentient beings who refrain from receiving women and girls are few, while others who don't refrain are many. So we see here this interesting transformation of Teri Sangamitta, from a princess to a nun, as you can see from these two images. So Mahinda's mission in Sri Lanka was successful. And then there was a need expressed to Emperor Asoka to establish Buddhism among the royal household in Sri Lanka and beyond. And then following the invitation from the Sri Lankan king and the request made by his son, Emperor Asoka sent Teri Mahinda Sangamitta and a retinue of other bhikkhunis to accompany her to Sri Lanka. But here you have an intergenerational dialogue. And here today you have these conflicts between parents and children. Here too, there was an element of a discussion because the emperor was not initially willing to give up his daughter. So she appealed to her father, stating, "Great king, the injunction of my brother is imperative, and the females who are to be ordained in Sri Lanka are many. On that account, it is absolutely essential that I should go there." And the emperor acquiesced and gave his blessing for her to go to Sri Lanka. And it is interesting also to compare this to the marriages of convenience, or the mariage de convenance that we call it in other languages. You have forced marriages and caste marriages still practiced in many countries, but in the royal households in the past, the so-called arranged marriages were common in that rulers used their daughters to expand often their empowers and their power. And Emperor Asoka broke another debilitating practice in this regard. Also, diplomatic gifts. Of course, in many countries, visiting other ambassadors visiting other countries, there are gifts that are involved, very expensive gifts. And in this particular case, the gift was the sapling of Ficus religiosa, a sapling of the Bodhi tree, which highlights the essence of the Buddha's teachings, the interdependence of people and nature. And so here you have the Bodhi tree in India, located in Bihar, where the Buddha realized enlightenment, a sapling taken to Sri Lanka and planted there. And here you have the image of the Bodhi tree in Sri Lanka, which survives today. It is the oldest living planted tree in the world with a recorded date of planting. And this is also extremely interesting in that it embodies the environmental policies of Emperor Asoka at the time, which is clearly enunciated in Major Pillar Edict 5, the first environmental policy of a state. I'm going to just quote one tiny sentence. Forests are not to be burnt either without reason or to kill creatures. And this policy extends the teachings of the Buddha on the interdependence of people and nature. And here is where the inscription is, and here it is in Prakriti. And according to the chronicles, and it was said earlier, Teri Sangamitta arrived by ship from Jambudipa to Jambukilapatana in Sri Lanka. And here we are. From Google Maps, you can see the place where her entourage and she herself landed. Another closer shot at this. The temple that has been now erected where she arrived. So, moving on and ending with what its relevance to the world today. So, the environment and conservation issues, climate issues, are not just simply about the whole area of conserving nature and wildlife. Let me read you, to my mind, probably one of the most important decisions, acknowledgements taken at the recent 2021 Glasgow Climate Pact, the COP26 outcome, that parties should, when taking action to address climate change, respect, promote, consider their respective obligations on human rights, the right to health, the right to indigenous peoples, local communities, migrants, children, persons with disabilities, and people in vulnerable situations, and the right to development, as well as gender equality, the empowerment of women, as well as gender equality, the empowerment of women, and intergenerational equity. This was acquiesced and agreed to by the nations who attended, including Sri Lanka and His Excellency, the President of Sri Lanka, who was there in Glasgow. So, what are our takeaways? With Sangamitta Day, we highlight the critical links between Buddhism, sustainability, justice, and also particularly the role of women. This is an example of the impact. It is a sustained impact, as we have seen in the statements made by the previous panelists and in the video which was shown earlier on by Bhante, of not just one individual, but a collective effort. The effort was sustained, constructive, not destructive. And that impact can now be seen and felt throughout the world. So here is an example of how one person can make a difference. And I would like to propose to all of you that we should make Sangamitta Day as the World Environment Day for Buddhism. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Don. Thank you very much for making those brilliant remarks and very timely and relevant to things that we are seeing happening the world over. A question that has been raised in the chat section, Don, if you would, is a question to you on education. So if anyone has any questions that they would like to ask, you're very welcome to unmute yourselves. Alert us by using the hands up reaction, and we will give you the opportunity of asking a question. If you do not want to ask a question, speaking out the question yourself, you could very easily type out the question in the chat section, and we will endeavor to answer it to the best of our ability. So Don, there is a question on education. How can we use this influence to benefit modern education systems in Sri Lanka? And I think this could also be a question that Professor Manori, you could give us some light upon, and Anuja as well. How can we use this influence by Venerable Sangamitta to benefit the modern education system in Sri Lanka?
Bhante, I would really like to ask the panelists, other panelists to respond, because they have a greater they have a great experience of this than I am. I will come in afterwards because I have just one suggestion concerning this, which I would like to hit upon.
Sure, lovely. Manori, would you like to? You would have to unmute yourself, please.
Bhante, do you mind repeating the question, please?
Yes. How can we use this influence to benefit the modern education system in Sri Lanka?
Well, the modern education system in Sri Lanka has, of course, on the plus points, no gender bias whatsoever. But the content is what I think we can take on. And I think a lot of these issues of collectively doing things and being sensitive to environmental issues are very much there. And also, topical problems. Children do know what's going on in the world. And there are lots of clubs on nature and environment. I would say that taking on from what Don said, Buddha was the greatest environmentalist of all. And this is something that, irrespective of religion, children are this aspect is being told, and obviously within the Buddhist curricula, that the Buddha, his life was always sort of very closely related to trees, whether he was born or enlightened or passed away under trees, and the amount of similes from bees to, all nature, that he was so close to nature. And to the older children, things like air pollution, rather amazingly, I can read to you some of the Buddha's stanzas on this, where he actually says, you would understand Pali, Bhante, tesam adamma raga rattanam. So I think too much of greed and heating up. And visama loba nibbhutanam, devona sammadaram, that I think the devas are going to flee. And dubbikkham, which is a famine. These are things that are happening. Hoti dusanam, whatever. Finally, that puttam tena bahu manussa kalam karoti, that is the children who would first be affected by these environmental issues. And here we are today with this pandemic, and with so much of, flying around and carbon miles, and, we are now in a very, it's just teaches a lot, doesn't it? And the powerful nations, Sangamitta's message, if we take it as bringing the Bhikkhuni order and the influence of religion, I don't think the Four Noble Truths were so evident even at the time of the Buddha as it is now when it comes to dukkha, and also it comes to anatta, how powerless we are, and so forth, and how impermanent everything is. I think, especially in the UK, people can't, or for that matter anywhere, people can't plan anything for next week even. I don't think, Bhante, when you can cross from Sri Lanka to UK, it's everything is there to be learned by just looking around. They don't have to go to school now. They're at home. Children are at home.
Thank you, Manori. I think on the same question raised by Shriyani, something that we can sort of remind ourselves of is the treaties which lay emphasis on the scenario which was present at the time in Anuradhapura depicts, yes, we'll come to you, Manoj, as well, depicts an image where Venerable Mahinda, Venerable Sangamitta's brother, and Venerable Sangamitta herself, upon her arrival to Sri Lanka, she set up house in Anuradhapura where they established a very good and strong educational system for bhikkhus, for females and males. And it is said, it is spoken of in the Mahavansa and the Deepavansa, where how the bhikkhus and the bhikkhunis worked so well together in creating a center and seat of education in ancient Anuradhapura, which was later on taken as an example in countries such as Burma, where they took Anuradhapura as an example to build their own foundation and seats of learning in Mandalay, Bagan, where then later on, after the different invasions and when Sri Lanka lost the seat of Buddhist education in the East, Mandalay flourished as a seat of education in the East. The examples were derived from the way that Venerable Mahinda and Venerable Sangamitta developed those curriculum systems for both males and females. And the art, architecture, education in all of these different politics, in all of these different sectors of life in Sri Lanka, after Venerable Sangamitta and Venerable Mahinda started working together, they effectively influenced the role that women played in all dimensions of life in Sri Lanka. Women were portrayed in art. Women had more priority in positions that they could hold. Women were given respect. This was cultivated. The first step that we made was the step which was taken by Venerable Sangamitta. So I think that is very important to note, that Venerable Sangamitta really was a person, a strong female leader, figurehead, who pronounced and who took the stand against any sort of to break barriers and to break stereotypes. Anuja, you wanted to add something?
Thank you, Venerable Sir. I want to just broaden the discussion a little bit, if you don't mind.
Yes, of course.
Because I want to share some experiences with the audience, because I spent nearly 5 years in Bhutan, which, as you know, is a Mahayana Buddhist country. And
yes.
I would say that Bhutan has indirectly benefited from the efforts of Sangamitta, who established the Bhikkhuni order in Sri Lanka, because in Bhutan, there's a thriving Bhikkhuni order. And there are Bhikkhuni monasteries which exist side by side with the monasteries of the bhikkhus, and it is accorded an equal position in Bhutan. So in terms of the equal opportunities that women enjoy in a Buddhist country, I would say that Bhutan is actually a wonderful example. And not only that, in terms of the impact on the environment. Now, at the moment in Bhutan, 75% of the country is under forest cover. And they recently embarked on drafting a written constitution. And in the written constitution, 65% of the land is preserved under forest cover in perpetuity. Now, I have to say that this 75% forest cover situation that Bhutan enjoys is not because of the Kyoto Protocol. It's not because of any of the environmental congregations that the United Nations has organized. It is purely because of the belief in the sanctity of life and the hesitancy on the part of people to fell trees or damage the environment because of the negative impact it has on life. So that is the reason why forests are preserved in Bhutan. And for the information of the audience, I would like to say that no killing of animals takes place in Bhutan, not even fishing. So the rivers are full of fish, and the forests are there for animals to roam freely. So in terms of the impact that Buddhism has had on the empire, on the environment, I would like to say that Bhutan is not only carbon neutral, it is carbon negative, and it is giving a gift of oxygen to the rest of South Asia. And the King of Bhutan has won several environmental awards. So it's not because the king has decreed that the environment should be protected, but it is solely because of the impact of Buddhism and the practices of the people, which enshrines respect for all sentient beings.
Sounds like we should all be booking a one-way ticket to Bhutan, Anuja.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to learn there.
All right. Thank you, Anuja. Thank you very much. And I did sort of, it is mentioned the post Anuja was an ambassador in Bhutan for the time of her stay there. So thank you very much, Anuja, Manori, and Manori, for your the points that you have raised. If we move on to the other questions. That
Bhante,
Yes.
Can I come in on that for just 1 minute?
Yes.
Also with Bhutan, just to quickly say that Bhutan has a different value or measurement for their progress. They call it the gross national happiness instead of gross domestic product. To the question concerning how to build into Sri Lanka an education system that is based on equity, diversity, and dealing with prejudices. Thank you, Shriyani, for that very interesting question. I'm going to address that directly. I respectfully submit that there should be a review of the educational process, particularly concerning the teachings concerning Buddhism, because Buddhism, to me, is a radical process which involves economics, politics, the governance side of things, the trend principles of governance espoused by the Buddha, and society and sustainable development. If you take just one little tiny line of the Buddha, Dega Rattang Hitaya Sukaya, lasting welfare and happiness. This to me is the essence of what sustainability is. So we have to ensure that these teachings or these teachings of Buddhism are related to the relevance of Buddhism to what is going on in our societies today. So that's the first one. The second one, case studies of women such as Sangamitta should be used. There are many other, of course, case studies, as you know. And the third thing, I think, is that there is a need to ensure that in each school there is a teacher who teaches bhavana, the cultivation of the mind. This is something which is happening throughout the UK today. As you know, mindfulness is now accepted in the National Health Service as an important scientific therapy. You have many initiatives in the UK among schools to promote what is called mindfulness training sessions. I do that in my university work as a Buddhist chaplain and as a mentor. One of the things which I do is to conduct mindfulness training sessions on how to study, how to imbibe information and retain information, how to deal with stress. So these are vital, important, really life teachings that are necessary for school children in Sri Lanka today. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Don. Manori, you want to say something?
Yes, please. I'm happy to say that mindfulness, what's called Satipasala, is happening. And in Buddhist and sort of non-Buddhist children, this has been now accepted by the education ministry, and it will be built into their curricula, and it's actually happening. And in many, many districts, started in Gampaha Dompe area around Meethirigala, and it's now spread. And it's now actually officially accepted.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Manori. We have a question from Finn. Finn, would you like to ask a question, your question, please?
Yes. Hello. Thank you, dear panelists, for sharing your information and knowledge. I have a question related to Bhutan, which came up earlier. I was wondering what the principles of governance were related or recommended by Buddhist wisdom and knowledge regarding tackling global heating, and with particular attention to the fact that we have a limited time and resources. So what would the priorities be given by Buddhist governance, what the world should focus on right now? Thank you.
Yes. Don, would you like to take this one?
Well, the first thing, thank you, Finn, for that very interesting question, which is really the critical be-all and the end-all question today. So on sustainability, the Buddhist message is basically sustainable, non-wasteful use of natural resources on which our development depends. That is really critical. I can go on for some time, but maybe it's something where we need to have a separate session in order to go into detail, because time is short at the moment. 10 principles of governance, which the Buddha highlighted, the Dasa Vidu Rahaja Dhamma, are very important. I'm going to go through it very quickly. Charity, dana; sila, morality; parityaga, altruism; ajava, honesty; madhava, gentleness; tapa, self-controlling; akoda, anger, non-anger; ahimsa, non-violence; khanti, forbearance; avirodhana, uprightness. Now, if you are to incorporate this into governance in Sri Lanka and the world, this is a radical form of governance. But the Buddha walked the talk. That is the most important thing for me in governance. The Buddha walked the talk, and in his administration, and then when dealing with the administration in the Sangha, he then practice these principles. So we need to we have the process, we have the framework. What we need to also is to implement and then walk the talk in the work that we do. Thank you.
Right. Finn, I have also put in a link for Dasa Raja Dhamma on the chat section, so you can see that right now. Okay. All right. Yes, Bhante, Ananda. Yes.
Yes, Venerable and dear friends. I would just like to mention the example of the Mahayana countries such as Taiwan and Korea and Vietnam, maybe even mainland China, but let's say Taiwan is full of bhikkhunis. And, actually they seem to be having the majority over the bhikkhus. There are monasteries, for instance, with 1,000 monastics, and there may be 600 bhikkhunis and 400 bhikkhus, for instance, for Kwangshan. They do a lot of activities for young people also in education, for lay people, also to take the precepts and to take the bodhisattva vows, maybe not as everybody becomes a real bodhisattva in order to get full Buddhahood, but at least to practice those good qualities. And you find that in Vietnam as well as in Korea as well. In Taiwan, where I spent many times in monasteries and with monks and nuns also, they had summer camps for children. Every year, a number of summer camps where 100 up to 200 children would participate for 4 or 5 days in huge monasteries and learn everything, quite a lot of aspects of Buddhism, how to worship, how to study, how to recite, and maybe even traditional handicrafts from their culture and things like that. So, and the other thing is, Taiwanese organization Fo Guang Shan organized the triple platform ordination for bhikkhunis in Bodh Gaya in February 1998, where 140 ladies, both Theravada, Mahayana, and Vajrayana Tibetan tradition, mostly Western ladies, got ordained for their Upasampada higher ordination. And also Bhikkhuni Kusuma got her ordination actually from a Korean temple in Varanasi, and also Bhikkhuni Sister Kema from Germany, she got her high ordination from a Taiwanese temple, Shi Lai Se in Los Angeles. So those are some of the examples of how the Bhikkhuni ordination has been established, and that lineage from Dhammasara Bhikkhuni from those days is still going on with an unbroken lineage. Could be re-imported into Sri Lanka also, why not?
Thank you very much, Bhante. Thank you very much. Bhante's answer coincides with one of the questions that were asked with regard to the treatment of bhikkhunis in different other countries. Another question that is present that has been sent in is, what is the role played by King Devanampiyatissa Sir in supporting the female Sangha? I think that would, anyone else who would like to take that question? Yes, Anuja.
So actually when Theri Sangamitta came to Sri Lanka to establish the Bhikkhuni order, the first to ordain was King Devanampiyattissa's queen, Queen Anula, and she attained enlightenment. And so the fact that, royalty took the first step meant that the highest priority and the highest respect was accorded to the bhikkhunis, and the maximum amount of support was given by the king himself to the establishment of the Bhikkhuni order. So it came right from the top, and therefore there was absolutely no hesitation in terms of acceptance, in terms of its popularity, and so therefore it just took off.
Thank you, Anuja. Don, do you have anything to add?
No, I don't think. I think that's a very good, important contribution. I think I would like to respect if there are any other questions people have. That has been done expertly.
Yes. Does anyone else have any questions that they would like to ask? Please put it down in the chat section, or you can also unmute yourself and voice any questions that you might have. I think with regards to that question, it is an important part where leadership today could look over at what was considered important and priority at the time. With King Devanampiyatissa, who invited Venerable Sangamitta through Venerable Mahinda, denotes a clear sort of need to support females and support female Sangha and the establishing of female Sangha. I think as a monk, I have heard many times, because there are so many complications in becoming a bhikkhuni, with bhikkhuni rights, female rights in current day society, within Buddhist context and other contexts. We do hear people who would then say, okay, why bother with all of these troubles? Just meditate at home, or just have your practice at home. Mind you that if Venerable Sangamitta did that, or Venerable or Anula did that, or the 500 women who ordained with Anula did that, Sri Lanka would not be having the first female prime minister in the world. Sri Lanka and in the East, women might be still fighting for the right to attend university and hold a degree, right? It is because of those sacrifices, those hard decisions, those muscle women who took on these tasks that we have our rights, or women and children have the rights that they do. So I would in every way personally encourage, stand up for what you believe in and stand up for what is right and correct in the world, right? And also to quote Venerable Ananda, when the Buddha said, when the Buddha remained silent, when he did not agree to the Bhukti-Sasana altogether, at first, Venerable Ananda could have just remained quiet and just gone on his way. He was ordained, right? He was serving under the Buddha, but no, Venerable Ananda said, for 3 times, the Venerable Ananda insisted that the Buddha gives the right of the females to have ordination. And this talks about that sense of perseverance in what you believe in is right and correct. Yes, Dil.
Just to thank Dr. Manori, because living in London, very often everybody talks about mindfulness. Some UK has all this mindfulness movement, but we forget that Venerable Dhammajiva from Nisarana started the Satipasala. I know at the very beginning it even came to England, and it was started and it's going on very well in Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and even now in England it started, but very many people don't know about it. And he started experiment, I think about 7 or 8 years ago in Royal and Visakhapatnam, and then one of the first schools that was taken, because in London, one of the first schools that was started was it because it was secular and it was a Muslim school, and there was another with behavioral problems where they first started about 7 years ago, and it was such a success. And one of the things that he insisted was that it was non-secular. I remember him having discussions with my daughter, and that it should be secular and not to be only for Buddhist children. And I was really proud that he took that on board, and there was lots of criticism in Sri Lanka for this being done like that. But I think that is the reason why the whole thing is so successful. And I think we must not forget about the contribution that Venerable Dhammajiva and Nisarana has made, not only in Sri Lanka, not only for Buddhists, but for all religions, and in many other Western countries, both in the East, like Australia and New Zealand, where these projects are really very successful, and there's international coordination of them. They're very well monitored and governed, and some of the children are actually reaching very high states of concentration in samatha meditation. So I think we should be proud, and thank you, Manori, for bringing that.
Thank you, Dil, for those comments. Sister Pulavanna, do you have anything? Would you like to share anything? You can unmute yourself, please. We can't hear you, sister. You would have to unmute yourself.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you now, sister.
Yeah, because regarding mindfulness, I launched experimental research in Canada. Then I was a teacher educator in English, and because English was not a favorite subject of the children there, and I started this my experimental research with some mindfulness. So before I start I trained the teachers as well as the children, and even the principals enjoyed doing this. And we managed to get the results doubled in those areas. So many, I think we had 24 schools in that project, and they all were interested because we started with Anapanasati, 5 to 10 minutes, and children enjoyed. And one of the schools who obtained best results was one girls' school in Kalani area. I just can't remember the name of the school. And one of the Muslim schools which are under me in Malwan area, Al Mubarak, they also obtained best results in that year because we launched this project. So what we did was the children all together, we went on practicing Anapanasati for 5 to 10 minutes, and then we started teaching. So I trained the teachers as well as the children And I took the results and I submitted it to the Department of Examinations as well as NIE. Recently also I met the DG of NIE, that means Education Institute of Education at Maharagama. I gave him a project to be launched, but because of this corona prompted up suddenly, I wonder what happened to it. But I'm going to talk to him again, DG NIE, and try to do something with that, because it is, I know it is so much profitable project for both teachers and children.
Thank you so much. Thank
Very.
Oops. I think Venerable has some technical issues, but we are also closing up to our end time. One of the questions that have come in, or rather suggestions, is to promote bhikkhunis in Sri Lanka. I feel we need to have good piravenas, that is monastic education institutions established for them and help ordination to re-establish. Need to get this together, need to do this all together. Well, yes. Does anyone have any comments about this specific type? I think with regards to female ordination, there are a lot of comments which are made, while some monks do support it, some monks don't support it. This, as a monk, I see as a weakness of the male establishment because of this male Sangha establishment, because it seems that within the hierarchy, within the Vinaya, within the way that the Buddha has sort of taught of how decisions should be made, the hierarchy of Sangha over different influences that have come in with time, specifically different invasions, the weakening of Sangha councils and all of that, we find ourselves in a position where the Sangha vote has lost its meaning, right? Now, to revive the Sangha vote, because everything within the Sangha is decided by a vote. It is not decided by a Sangha Raja or a king of Sangha in a way, not by one person. It is always decided by a very democratic process of election. So this has to be reformed. And what we have seen through history is usually when this Sangha vote is weakened, it is often reinforced and supported by the government to re-establish the Sangha vote, which of course, I know that a lot of bhikkhus are asking for this sort of reform to take place with regard to with regards to the different Sangha councils and the Sangha Raja councils which are present. So this, we are nearing to the end of our session today. Would anyone like to share any final comments with regard to whatever which was shared?
May I ask a question? A practical question?
Yes. And
May
I think Yushi
okay.
also wanted to share, ask a question or share some thoughts. Venerable Yushi, if you still want to do it, share something, you can do this after. Yes, Analaya.
Yes, please. I'm asking a practical question. Bhikkhuni ordination has been going on for the past, every year for the past more than 10 years already. And because of the COVID-19 situation, and this yearly or ordination has been suspended. So is there any thought among the bhikkhunis in Sri Lanka to start bhikkhuni ordination again and see how this can be arranged through maybe through consultation with the health authorities and the government side in Sri Lanka to allow this international arrivals to participate in this, maybe to organize an international bhikkhuni ordination, because there are a lot, I know of a lot of Sikamanas and seminaries who are waiting to receive higher ordination. And because of this COVID situation, travels were restricted, and the yearly event has been held off for quite a while, for 2 years now. So is there any possibility that our esteemed bhikkhunis and bhikkhus in Sri Lanka would take the initiative to organize an international bhikkhuni ordination next year, so that so many of them who have been waiting to receive higher ordination can realize their aspiration?
Yes.
So would it be possible for the bhikkhunis and the bhikkhus in Sri Lanka to consult with the health authorities and the government there and see how they can facilitate international arrivals to participate in this international bhikkhuni ordination, if they intend to organize one, to fulfill the aspiration of the bhikkhuni candidates from all over the world?
Yes. I think, would anyone like to ask that? But my thoughts on the matter would be that the bhikkhunis in Sri Lanka are facing a bit of difficulty with legal recognition. So even the Venerable Upalavanna, who is present with us and who has also part of the panelists, a situation that most bhikkhunis are going through is the government does not offer legal status for bhikkhunis in Sri Lanka, because there is still this sort of confusion of what is the right decision to make. And also there are a lot of prominent figures who are against the bhikkhuni establishment, right? Against the bhikkhuni establishment. Clear decisions have not been reached. So in many parts, from the government part, there is a weakness because of these forces that deter the government from making a clear decision. But personally, my belief is that this is rather unfair. The women or the female Sangha has not been essentially given the respect of a proper council being sort of offered to discuss these issues outright and directly. So there is a problem that is sort of keeping an international ordination of sorts of happening. Yeah, but we would like to signpost you, Sister Venerable, we would like to signpost you to organizations. So if you kindly send me your email, I will email you with those relevant organizations and signpost you to those organizations for you to carry on the conversation, if that helps. I would like to sort of also point out that some monks are misogynistic, not all monks though, right? So not all monks, there are a lot of us who do support the female Sangha, and we also do see the unfairness of the whole situation that is there. Venerable Yushi, would you like to unmute yourself, please? Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, now I understand that there are some difficulties for bhikkhunis in Sri Lanka, but at the same time, we have to admit that Sri Lanka is the most open country for Theravada bhikkhunis in the world, comparatively compared with Myanmar and Thailand. The ladies who want to be bhikshunis want to come to Sri Lanka, because Sri Lanka is the only country where people can, women can get the chance, opportunity to get ordained. But unfortunately, officially, as we have discussed, some main theras reluctant to admit officially the Theravada Sanghas, and there are some rooms for rooms to be improved more. Actually, I came from the Mahayana country. I came from Japan, and so in Japan, sometimes people have been discussing that in Theravada countries, especially bhikshunis are comparatively discriminated, or from the viewpoint of human rights.
I think we are facing some technical difficulties.
So I would like to,
Venerable,
frankly,
we missed about 10 seconds. Could you repeat? We missed about 10 seconds.
Okay. Yes. Actually, so in the bhikshuni, usually according to the Vinaya, the bhikshunis have to observe more than 300 rules. So it's much more stricter than the bhikkhus. So that means in human, from the modern human right, modern viewpoint of the modern human right, not the religious perspective, the right of the ladies are restricted. But from the viewpoint of the frank, I want to ask the frank opinion. So especially the bhikshunis, how do you interpret, or how do you understand the modern human rights situation, or compared with the religious belief? Especially, this is my contemporary concern, because usually in Mahayana countries, or actually some ladies in Western countries try to enlarge, try to strengthen the right of ladies. But this is maybe crush the idea of early Buddhism would be crushed sometimes because of such kind of modern ideas from the viewpoint of human rights. So I would like to ask the frank opinion from the Bhikshuni Vahanses.
From the Bhikshuni Vahanse. Venerable Upala, seems to be a question for you, Venerable Upalavanta.
Yeah. I think some Bhikshunis will be asked such a kind of question sometimes. So maybe some of you have been prepared of this kind of answer, maybe, I expect.
Yes. I think with regards to the different conversations that we could have around the context of bhikkhunis and human rights and the different issues that the community might be facing, we might have to have another sort of occasion to go into detail, to sort of go into these different sort of areas, because it is a vast amount of discussion that we would have to go to. So we would probably have another event where we would be able to sort of relate to all of these questions that might be in people's minds. Also, I do know that in the West, living in the West, there's a lot of people who would like to sort of go into the Bhikkhuni Sasana and enjoy the sort of the Dhamma in the ways that bhikkhus enjoy and flourish from the Dhamma. So these are areas that is of much concern to many practitioners all across the world. So what we will essentially be then hoping to do is to have a different session where we will be able to address these different issues in time to come. So for today, I would like to thank all our panelists for making the time, contributing, bringing your contributions, and very valuable points being raised on the issues of issues that are faced by the Bhikkhuni order and the community of Bhikkhunis. I think what we should always, as Buddhist practitioners and learning from Buddhist teachings, it is always on the front of respecting another and loving, giving the foundations and loving those foundations to flourish, where a person can cultivate the practice in a way that the person is comfortable with themselves and who they are, to work with their inner demons and sense of hindrances. So as practitioners who might be tuning in from everywhere, from across the world, we should ask ourselves, what can I do? What can I do to sort of support? What can I do to sort of to bring to light certain issues that might be faced by the community? And it is always important to also check ourselves, right? To check ourselves, to check what defilements that we might be working with. And even whilst we talk about misogyny, we must also not forget that sometimes there are variants of misogyny that can exist even within women towards women. Right? And this is something that we must check ourselves each and every single day to sort of pull ourselves out from these very harmful attributes of mind, and to truly sort of embrace the Dhamma in a wholesome aspect where everyone, regardless of gender, regardless of caste, regardless of where we come from, if I want to practice Dhamma, if I want to commit to the Dhamma practice and become a monk or a nun or become a part of the Sangha, I should be able to do that. You should be able to do that. And we should work towards creating those foundations within the society that we live in. We should not be going back. We should always try to move forward. So that is the message that I would leave all of you. And we very much look forward to sort of holding another panel and to discuss the different issues, to bring to light whatever issues that are found within our communities. And I know that this is not specifically a Sri Lankan issue. This is an issue which exists all around the world, all across the world, in different countries, even in many different Buddhist countries. So learning and sort of committing to sort of change ourselves, and to also make the attempt to change things that we might see could be changed, or we could offer in terms of, you know, any effort that we can make in terms of that change, would be very much something that we need right now. So thank you, everyone. Thank you to all the audience that has joined in. All the very best with your practice, and looking forward to seeing all of you again at a different panel discussion with regards to this issue. Thank you to all the panelists who've taken the time. Thank you to the servants of the Buddha who've agreed to this partnership. It has been lovely working with all of you, and have a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you very much, Donna.
Thank you, Bhante, so much.
Yes.
Thank you. Everyone,
Take care. Have a wonderful rest.